Hi guys, welcome to the blog. Thanks for tuning in. Just want to keep you updated on what's going on recently with me. I'm going to start with the trip. We had a little trip to Bern in Switzerland, which is the actual capital of Switzerland. It's German speaking. We learned that actually 60% of Switzerland is German speaking, which was surprising because we usually just go to Geneva, which is French, and yeah. Anyway, it was a cool city. Really liked it. The reason for our trip was because we wanted to go and use a float tank or a sensory deprivation tank, which is a little pod that you go in and you float in like this ultra saline solution, like very salty water, kind of like the Dead Sea. It's very buoyant, and you float there, and it's complete darkness. There's no sound, so all you can hear is your breath and your heartbeat, and it kind of feels like you're in a womb, and you kind of stay in there for an hour, and you kind of have this sort of mind-body separation. And to be fair, I've already got like a mind half-body separation, but it was cool. It's like quite a deep, sort of almost spiritual, semi-psychedelic experience. I'd love to go into more detail, but you can just research it if you like. Joe Rogan talks about it very passionately on his podcast.
The sensory deprivation chamber has been the most important tool that I've ever used for developing my mind.
And I'll put a link down in the description if you want to learn more about it. But it was really cool. Lou had a cool time. She wrote a big essay about it, and that's something that maybe she'd like to share another time. But we both had some very cool experiences in the tank. And the guy running the place was super cool. We chatted for about an hour afterwards. We came out, and he, after a while, we spoke for an hour. We were speaking about my disability, and how he put it. He sort of framed it as like a sort of a mind upgrade, instead of like a body disability. And I've sometimes referred to it as like I'm taking a master's degree in life, because now I've done I've had a pretty easy life, sort of like cruising through college, and now I've decided to go to university, and learn about life from a different perspective, which is a really cool way of framing it. It really helps with that sort of mentally dealing with it, because you think, yeah, okay, I'm gonna do something that a lot of people won't ever do. I didn't choose to do it, but it's something that I'm doing, and it's a good way. And he was a really cool guy. Anyway, he suggested after a while of talking, he sort of gauged us, and he suggested coming back and doing psychedelics in the tank and staying for longer. Again, it's something that Joe Rogan talks about, but I don't want to go into too much detail because my mum watches this, and I don't want to sort of promote anything inappropriate that my mum would disapprove of. But I think it'd be super cool to do that another time. But anyway, we had a great time, and Bern is a cool city. Another thing we did was we stayed in a hotel. We stayed overnight, and the hotel experience was a bit weird because it just opened my eyes to, I guess, the sort of struggles that disabled people go through. So I had to pay more to stay in a disabled room, which I thought was a bit weird because I didn't really think that was very fair. But I thought, well, the disabled room must be a lot bigger. Wasn't. Seriously, if I wasn't skinny in a very slender wheelchair, there's no way I would have got past the bed into the other part of the hotel room. Plus there was a step going into the room, which is fine for me. It was a small step, I can go down that quite easily. But a lot of people couldn't do that, that are disabled, if they're like in an electric wheelchair where they can't pop a wheelie. I had Lou with me, which is very handy because I asked for like the disabled chair for the shower room, and they just gave me this little stool. This little stool. I have a small bum, and my cheeks were overhanging, and I was like, wow, like really? Like this, I can do this with great difficulty because I've got fairly good balance, and from the waist up I'm pretty able. And it was really difficult for me, and I thought, if I was any more disabled, this would be a ball ache. It was a ball ache anyway, but I was just like, wow, okay. That was an eye-opener, and it kind of left me in a bit of a negative mind space, but luckily we brought some of our special brownies with us, which lightened the mood. So we went out of the hotel room and we decided to use public transport. Again, another first for me. They've got a nice tram system in Bern, which is really cool. And so we're waiting for the tram, and when it pulled up, like, we were like, well, I don't know how to get on. There's quite a big gap between the tram and the sort of platform. So I said to Lou, oh, we'll just ask someone to lift, or we can just try and hop it or whatever. Like, and then the driver comes off, this funny little guy. He's got a bald head, little moustache, and he's really angry, and he starts shouting and gesturing at us in German to come down the front of the tram. So we do. He sort of angrily gets the ramp and slams it on the ground, and we go in, and yeah, it was kind of weird. I was, again, if I hadn't have had a little bit of brownie, I was a little bit bemused. Otherwise, I'd have been quite angry. So I said to the guy next to me afterwards, I said, "Can you speak English?" And he said, "Yeah." I was like, "What was he so angry about?" He was like, "He's just a dick." I was like, "Okay, cool. I thought he might have been a dick, but thanks for confirming that." He was just basically saying that if you want to get on the tram on a wheelchair, you have to use the first carriage. I didn't know that. You know, I didn't. Now I do, but that, again, that was a weird experience for me. But going into Bern was almost like a sensory overload, because we live in a very sleepy little town in the French Alps and we love it. But Bern was such a cool city. It was like everywhere you go, there was something going on. There was these big grand buildings, and just people playing music and hanging out, and it seemed really, really fun. It was just really cool. And so, in stark contrast to the sensory deprivation tank, we had a sensory overload. We went out for a meal in a restaurant, which is actually the first time we've done that since the accident. It was a really cool restaurant. In fact, they were super, super nice, lovely. The meal was reasonably priced and delicious, so I was very happy with that. They've also got like CBD shops in Bern, which is quite cool. And for those of you that don't know what CBD is, it's a non-psychoactive substance that comes from a cannabis plant, and you can, through genetics and stuff, you can make cannabis plants that have very low THC, like less than 1% THC, and very high CBD. So when you smoke it, or you can have it in pill form, or you can make oil, whatever. It's very relaxing. People use it for anxiety. I use it for muscle spasms. People with Parkinsons use it. In fact, there's some really cool videos on YouTube. It works so quickly for people with Parkinsons. They're like, shaky. They have some CBD, and within 2 minutes, they're just like, and you're like, wow, that's a really cool thing. That's awesome, and it helps me with my muscle spasms too. So the CBD is quite cool. It looks exactly like a weed plant. It smells exactly the same, so it's really cool. So on the streets they had like CBD shops, and outside they had plants growing, which was really cool. I really enjoyed it. And we went in and we spoke to the guy at length about the whole process, and he was saying that within 1 year or two, for sure, 100%, they're going to legalize cannabis. So the people that are doing the CBD are already set up perfectly for that transition, because they've already got the grow rooms, they've already got the shops, and they can just, start selling weed just like Amsterdam.
People like it.
No.
Just show that it's all different ones. That's cool.
That's pretty cool. That was really cool. I had some good conversations. The other thing that happened in Bern was there was a marathon on, which is cool. Like, marathons are great, but I had no idea it was on. And so I don't know, man. Like, a marathon is like a huge celebration of legs, isn't it? It's like, hey, everyone, let's go running. Let's go use our legs to run 26 miles. and it was cool, but I was like, fuck, I didn't know that was on, and I'm just the only, well, actually I did see one other person in a wheelchair, but they were quite old, and I was like, ah, damn it, I'm probably like one of two people in this city that I've seen that can't use their legs, and like there's thousands of people just running in the streets. And it was cool, but it was a bit like, again, if it wasn't for like the brownie, I may have been a bit more, just, it was a bit hard to, it was a bit of a difficult situation, just like, okay, that's cool, like, that's something I'll never do. However, saying that, I did see on Instagram recently that there was a girl who did a marathon with leg braces and crutches. Still, probably something I'll never do because I'm not a huge fan of breaking into a sweat when I exercise. So when I sweat, I'm like, right, slow down a bit, you're perspiring. So it was also quite funny. The guy in the sensory deprivation tank, he gave me this. He also didn't charge me, which was really cool. Like, I went to pay, and he said, oh, that card won't work here. And I said, oh, I'm really sorry, mate, I didn't realise it was cash only. And he was like, oh, don't worry about it, and I'll send you a bill. And he never did. And I was like, that's what a cool guy. He was super, super lovely. Anyway, he gave me this thing, which is like, if you look through it, it's like kind of like a sort of kaleidoscopic sort of
That's epic
thing. And it was really funny because there was people running a marathon, and there was me in a wheelchair just going, wow, man, look at your fingers. It's just like, and people were like, oh, bless him. But yeah, it was quite funny. It was a really cool time in Bern, and it was nice to get out and see what it's like to, travel and go to different places. And to be fair, a lot of Bern was very flat and quite accessible in a wheelchair. There was a very, very cobbly hill, which I conquered, actually. I wheelied down it, and it was something that, remember, probably 15, 20 blogs ago, I was terrified of the outside world. And I remember Corentin taking me out and like going, I was just so scared. And now I went to Bern, and there's this massive cobbly hill, and I was just like, yeah, I'll just wheelie down that. And I did it, and it was cool. Like, I was just a very obvious sign of how far I've come, and that's really cool.
So we're in Bern right now, and we are hiding underneath an umbrella, and it's hailing, and it was, whoa! It's literally hailing. You can't really see, but it is, mate, and it was really sunny like 5 minutes ago. Just boom, whoa! Weather said scattered showers. This is scattered showers. That's so funny. Whoa, whoa, whoa!
So yeah, that was our trip to Bern. I've banged on about that enough, so I think I'll draw the blog to a close now, and I will talk about the operation on my hip in the next blog. So thanks again for tuning in. Love you all. Yeah.